Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Number to call, 888-589-8840. Number to call, 888-589-8840. Just want to read a little bit more about Brad Ike, the CEO of Mozilla. I've got a new question up on the Focal Point Facebook page, and that is, do you think he should stand up to the gay Gestapo, or do you think he should resign? So that's the question up on the Focal Point Facebook page for discussion right now. Glad to have your input, your reaction. Do you think the CEO of Mozilla should stand up to the gay Gestapo, or should he resign? Now, here is what was written by a man by the name of Owen Thomas. He's the managing editor of a publication called Valley Wag, which is a self-described tech gossip rag. So it's based right there in the Silicon Valley. And here are some of the things that he said. And he's writing this to Brad Ike, the CEO of Mozilla. You've already said that you won't bring any personal exclusionary beliefs to the workplace. But your actions in 2008 were not personal or private, even though it was a private donation, and by law should have remained confidential. They were public acts of speech. No, they weren't. They were made public because somebody committed a crime. They were public acts of speech for which your constituents are rightly holding you accountable now. Now think about that just for a second. You know, one of the truths about a hypocrite is that he doesn't recognize that he's a hypocrite. He's blind to his own hypocrisy. He just doesn't see it. It's evident to everybody else, but he can't see it because he's so consumed with self-righteousness. Now, this guy says, look, you are not supposed to bring any exclusionary beliefs, personal exclusionary beliefs, to the marketplace. But these guys want to run him out of town on a rail. In other words, what they are bringing to the workplace are personal exclusionary beliefs. They want this guy personally and publicly excluded from the corporate community at Mozilla Firefox. So a staggering level of hypocrisy and double standards there. This guy goes on to say, stop saying that this was merely a private matter that won't affect your work. Say whatever chain of logic led you to conclude, so then they insist he apologized. Say whatever chain of logic led you to conclude that your personal views required you to support Prop 8 was flawed, erroneous, and incorrect. He's even writing this guy's apology for him. You got to go before the people in dust and ashes, in sackcloth, dust on your head, and you got to say, my reasoning was flawed, erroneous, and incorrect. Say that you support the rights of people to enter into same-sex marriages everywhere, and finally make a donation equal in amount to the money that you gave to Proposition 8. So that's the gay Gestapo trying to bag another scalp. 888-589-8840. Let's go to the phones. Let's start with Gene in Joplin, Missouri. Gene, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Fisher.
Hey.
Well, what's on my mind is your discussion about Paul withstanding Peter to his face for dissembly and dissimulation, which, let me just put it like this. The last kind of bondage is the pride mixed with teachings of men, and the hardest kind of bondage to break is a deal made with tradition. So the last call to us is, do we desire the approval of man more than the approval of God?
Mm-hmm.
And the call to the faithful is, come out from among them and be clean, separated unto God directly, touching, holy.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's a good word, Gene. I appreciate that. And, you know, again, and what Paul says to Peter is, look, you're being a hypocrite. He says this to Barnabas. Barnabas was his best buddy. I mean, they were colleagues and partners in ministry. Even Barnabas was drawn away from the truth because he was afraid of displeasing the wrong people. And I cannot tell you how much trouble we will get in if we are afraid of the wrong people. Now, there are certain people that we should want to please and not, we should not want to make them angry because we love them, we admire them, we do value their opinion of what we do. I'm not saying that that's bad, don't misunderstand me, but who are we afraid of? I mean, that's the issue. If somebody's opinion matters to me, is that a person whose opinion should matter to me? Now, Paul would say, frankly, I could care less what the New York Times thinks about me. I could care less what the Washington Post says about me. I could care less what CBS says about me because their opinion simply does not matter to me. The only one whose approval I seek, the only one whose approval matters to me is Jesus Christ and the Father. All right, good call, Gene. Thank you for that. Let's go to Paul in Dallas, Texas. Paul, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, I wanted to comment on your comments on the show Modern Family.
Yes.
You're simply bringing up something that's been around for an extremely long time. I noticed when I was watching a little bit of sitcom TV in the 80s as I was growing up, I really couldn't see what people liked about, I think there was a show called Family Ties. Was that the one with Michael J. Fox?
Yes,
Yeah, well, they had him as a young conservative, and I just caught pieces of a couple of shows, and the first thing I noticed is that since he was the one expressing the conservative position, he was always portrayed as, pretty much an intellectual buffoon, and I kind of recognize that for what it is. But as you pointed out, this, influencing people through fiction is as old as Uncle Tom's Cabin or that propaganda film that Hitler had where, I don't remember the title of it, but he had some Nazi woman with a little swastika around her neck, and she was in Czechoslovakia, and all those nasty Czech people were persecuting her and threatening her with violence, and this is just before he invaded Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, he had a woman who was a filmmaker, Lily Rosenthal, and she went around just making movies to glorify the Nazi regime and paint the Jews as a source of all evil.
Yeah, exactly. And today the biggest analogs we really have is comedy, like The Daily Show, Family Guy, Saturday Night Live. And the thing, like Crane Durham points out, Jon Stewart will do all his rolling his eyes at conservatives and mocking them and so on. And then when he gets called on it as being a political advocate, he takes the coward's way out like, hey, this is just a comedy. This is just a comedy. And my point is that liberals really need to use fiction because that's about the only place where they can make themselves look good because they can concoct a complete fantasy scenario. You're not looking at a real family. You're not looking at a documentary. You're looking at a piece of fiction concocted in some person's mind. And when they have to deal with the facts, things come out different. The biggest ironic counterexample to that is on NPR, no less. There's this program called Intelligence Squared where they have Oxford-style debates. And I have yet to see a single debate when they put up the proposition and they have the two sides debate where the meter doesn't move towards the more conservative position.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a format where facts are argued and you don't get to play propaganda games like referring to homosexual sex as love when, and getting to mix that stuff up when God supports everybody loving everybody, men loving men, women loving women. He's opposed to them having sex with each other.
Yeah.
But you throw the word love over it and you get to con a bunch of weak-minded people.
Yeah.
So it's the world we live in. AFR is, doing the things that they need to do, with making some other movies showing a different worldview. But unfortunately, we have a generation that because they have smartphones, they think they're the most educated. And because their brains are really fed their worldview from The Daily Show and Family Guy and Saturday Night Live and on, they're really some of the most ignorant people around.
Well, and I think it was Thomas Sowell. I appreciate your call, Paul. Thank you very much for that. And I think Thomas Sowell was the one that coined the expression, or maybe he picked it up somewhere else, but he says a lot of progressives, they are smart, they are educated, but they are ignorant. So they're smart people, and they're often very impressed with their own intellect. They are educated. They've gone to all of the right schools, and they may have pedigrees and credentials and degrees after their name. So they're educated. They got the sheepskin to hang on the wall. But they are utterly, absolutely clueless and ignorant about life. Remember Proverbs 1, Solomon says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. In other words, if you want to have knowledge, and what he means by knowledge is knowledge of the truth, knowledge of life, knowledge about what makes life work and what makes it not work, If you want knowledge that counts, if you want the knowledge of the things that are really important in life, you have to begin with the fear of Yahweh. If you don't start there, you will never get to knowledge. You will never learn anything that's reliable, trustworthy, dependable, useful, and helpful, because you have to start with the fear of the Lord. Otherwise, all the information, whatever you accumulate, is going to be skewed. It's going to be distorted. It's going to be twisted. It's going to be out of alignment with the truth. Well, let's go to Eric in Missouri. Eric, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Ronald Reagan said, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant, it's just that they know so much that isn't so.
That's a true fact.
Now, that last caller, Paul, man, I tell you what, Paul, call in, give AFR your number, and I'll call in and get it. I'd love to dialogue with you, man. It's going to be hard to follow after him. But I agree with what he said, though, about Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was propaganda. But anyway, Brian, here's the deal. You mentioned the fact that people were molded and shaped by what they watch on the boob tube. Well, I'll tell you what. Think about this. I was turned into a radical environmentalist. I was thoroughly confused about the theory of evolution because I walked in the council of the ungodly. I walked, I stood, and I sat with them for 8 hours a day for 12 years. And I think that it's folly. Like Ken Ham pointed out in his book, Brian, that you'll recall, Already Gone, we're thinking that we have a little devotional for 5 minutes in the morning, then we go to church 3 hours a week, that we're going to combat the propaganda. They are getting the same type of propaganda in government centers of pagan indoctrination, these re-education camps.
And I appreciate that, Eric. I got to let you go because I'm out of time, but you're exactly right. Schools have become nothing more than re-education camps in socialism. Focal Point and AFR Talk, back after the news.